do our thing.
Okay.
We are Showtime, as Bob Fosse and Roy Scheider said, right? It's Showtime, and all that jazz. So it's this is the second time around, which is sometimes even better. We're blessed to have back Will Dodson.
That's right. Hey, happy to be here.
What? Yeah, on Journey of an Aesthete podcast. And, before when you were on, we were talking about a very particular subject. Wes Craven, one of my favorite filmmakers.
Right.
In his movies. And this is a little different. It's related to entertainment and you might say commercial filmmaking and TV. But the subject is I think on all of our minds now, if only for the word and name of a hit TV show with Lisa Kudrow, The Comeback, right? So that's going on. I'm engrossed in that, which is a really good show. Shout out to that show. And it maybe is not too far apart from the subject of this book with which you're involved and other things we can talk about. So welcome back to the show. And where did you want to start? Did you want to talk about philosophically what comebacks mean in America or the world in general, or what?
Yeah, that'd be great. I think you're right. It's relevant on so many levels. Well, first I'll introduce the project that you're referring to. This is a book called Comebacks: The Return of the Aging Film Star, and it's not my book. I'm just a contributor.
Right.
It's edited by Gloria Monti, who is a professor of film studies at California State Fullerton.
Oh, wow.
And Martin Shinglerand, who's an independent scholar.
Yeah.
And the idea of the book initially, as I understood it from Gloria, was to look at aging film stars and comebacks. I mean, it all starts with Sunset Boulevard, and we can get into that as we discuss. But it looks at various kinds of comebacks. There's the return of a star whose glory has kind of faded, and they come back as a veteran star and gain kind of a new or second act in their careers. There are comebacks in which veteran stars, especially women, kind of take on a camp presence. You think of things like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane or something like that.
Hold that thought, because I want to, of course, mention to the audience that there was that recent biopic about the feud, right? Ryan Murphy picture, which is about the Betty Davis, Joan Crawford relationship, and so there's one. I'll say a little bit more, just a little bit. A few years ago at Harvard Film Archive, we had a Aldrich Film Festival, which is kind of a treat if you're into him as a filmmaker, and just things like that. So I just didn't want to let that go. That was a recent subject came up. That subject came up. It comes up a lot. So go ahead. So I apologize for the interruption.
Oh, no, not at all. Well, in fact, it's apropos because we're looking at interruptions in the careers of these film stars. Gloria Martin also looked at ways in which stars in some of their latest or later or final roles kind of take on new contexts. And furthermore, looked at ways in which we kind of consider aging stars' bodies, right? One of the sort of complicated relationships we have with the silver screen is that it, in a way, makes the younger bodies of certain stars immortal in ways that they themselves are not, and we see them age and compare them against their youthful appearances. So this book kind of covers a lot of different perspectives on not only comebacks in terms of careers, but comebacks in terms of how we view aging culturally, and in terms of how we understand actors, performers in these changing contexts. And it struck me, as it took a month or two for us to schedule this talk, in the time that you invited me to come on, between then and now, I've seen all of these recent news stories about tech CEOs in Silicon Valley investing in longevity research, and this is the latest rage, right? We always try to stay young, whether it's cosmetically or now genetically, but there seems to be
stay young through but uploading ourselves to a computer is how
right. There seems to be a renewed
mania
interest in it. And funny enough, Wes Craven wrote a novel called The Fountain Society that was about the aging oligarchs attempting to create clone bodies to perpetuate their lives. So
I haven't read it. I need to read. Have you read it? I'm sure you read it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's a pretty interesting. It's a good airport novel. You can. It's a real. I don't say that dismissively. It's kind of a breezy read, kind of a sci-fi thriller.
As we talked about in that episode, he has a background as an English teacher before he even.
That's right. Yeah.
Maybe so. He knows literature. He knows writing.
Absolutely.
Interesting to read that. I don't. So there's so many things that come to mind hearing you talk initially, because of course there's comebacks of different age groups. So it's not only the elderly or senior actors. Actually, there's a whole. Well, of course, Lisa Kudrow's example, the middle-aged, or the people we would consider not old. And it goes all the way. Probably, I'm thinking of the bandwagon with Fred Astaire. The seed of that film is that Tony Hunter, the song and dance man, is past his prime. But of course, it's Fred Astaire in the 50s. How past his prime could he be? Right? It's a little bit, a little bit strange. But we sort of believe it for that musical. Or how QT Tarantino, what the wonderful things he's done with Robert Forster and Jackie Brown. And of course, John Travolta in Pulp Fiction, he is for John Travolta, and but in Chuck Klosterman's book, The '90s, he quotes Tarantino as saying, "I don't see Travolta kind of the way people see him now. For me, he's always in a way Tony Manero. He always brings Tony Manero with him, and he's still that figure for me, and I believe in that. And so it's just kind of so that's a case where the filmmaker or creator has utmost respect for an actor. Those are just examples. There's many more and others. I'm sure we could talk. We got to talk about Woody Strode, great African-American acting in Hollywood, if you want to get into that later. But that's that's kind of so you've been thinking about it, I guess, even more since we rescheduled. What else comes to your mind when you're thinking about the present? I mean, putting aside the weird science or the craziness of Silicon Valley, just so more maybe prosaic, or like the examples I said of somebody that hasn't been around for a while or has been around and they come back.
Well, there are all these interesting new developments in cinematic technology around aging, right? The de-aging processes that people like Scorsese used in The Irishman. That have now become kind of commonplace, and the continued interest in, even though the market has become smaller, but the continued interest in physical media collecting and the restoration of so many films of all genres from all countries, from the silent era till now. That give us an opportunity to reconsider and reacquaint ourselves with the stars and character actors of previous decades. In a way, these restorations and re-releases are comebacks and
they are
themselves.
While we're on the subject, of course, today we lost one of the great French actresses, Natalie Baye, who was in. Died at the age of 78 today, who did so many films.
I hadn't heard. Oh, that's a shame.
That just happened today. And of course, that made me think of not only Every Man for Himself, Godard, but Catch Me If You Can. She's in that. But she's more known for La Balance, all this history, all those almost like Gerard Depardieu, like kind of someone, the long career in French film. And I only mention her, of course, because she just passed, but also because, I've been on the rooting around for movies that are lost. And would you say that a lot of movies made between 1990 and 98 are especially lost or fall by the wayside because they're unfortunately timed in terms of, DVD, VHS, changing, and they're not uploaded or they're not bought by a platform? I mean, what comes to mind is Lizzie Borden's Love Crimes, which you cannot find with Sean Yan, or to speak of Natalie Bay, the Venus Beauty Institute, you can only get it in France.
Yeah.
So sometimes these people need to come back when they haven't had one, or there's that. But I mean,
absolutely. A lot of the work that I do, kind of outside of academia, is writing and recording video essays and audio commentaries and interviews with surviving crew and filmmakers for restorations. And there are so many films, first of all, that never made it to VHS, and then so many VHS films that never made it to DVD. And then, of course, the vast swath, something like 80% of all silent films that are lost forever. And yet we're continually finding films in, I was actually working on a release of the exploitation films Gatorbait and Gatorbait 2 with the old drive-in films, Gatorbait 2 being a direct-to-video film.
Oh, yeah.
And a whole reel that had been thought lost was found in a garage somewhere.
That's fantastic.
Just about a month ago.
A little bit more about this, because I saw those in Tampa, Florida, in the 70s.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
A company out of Savannah called TerraVision had worked with the Ferd and Beverly Sebastian, the filmmaking couple behind those two films, and had found most of the original elements and had shot interviews with all of the family, the surviving cast and crew, but they were missing a reel from Gatorbait 2, and Gatorbait 2 is not going to make the AFI top 100 list anytime soon, but it's a fairly significant exploitation film, and so when this reel was discovered, it changed the whole kind of pacing and tone of the film, and so we were looking at it in this new kind of way, and also changed our appreciation of the cinematography, the technical details. So we constantly find, I say we, like I'm the one digging through the archives. I'm not the one digging through the archives, but archivists continually find these reels and these films that are long thought lost, and so they themselves are making comebacks to generations of film viewers who otherwise would never have had the opportunity to see them. So it's great. It's kind of
remarkable you're doing this. So you're kind of that's. Do you mind before we move maybe to topics of Woody Strode or some of these actresses, mentioning at least two other projects you've been doing commentary, because that's a whole field or just recently that comes to mind that.
This is something I've gotten into over the last couple of years. The first project I worked on came out of the book that I co-edited with my friend Christopher Woofter, American Twilight, the Cinema of Tobe Hooper. After that book came out, we were contacted by Michael Felsher at Red Shirt Pictures to record a commentary for Hooper's 1990 made-for-television film I'm Dangerous Tonight with Anthony Perkins. That was great fun. And since then, I've been working with another producing partner named Ryan Verrill, and together we've worked on, everything from the German animated cat film Felidae for Deaf Crocodile to the Italian Gothic horror film Spider Labyrinth for Severin Films, which just and it's been such a pleasure to get the opportunity to interview cast and crew and look at archival materials to develop visual essays and research for audio commentaries, which really, I mean, they reach a much wider audience oftentimes than academic books. So it's a lot of fun.
True. Will, is there one or two stories or anecdotes? It could be anybody or any type of story that stays with you from I don't know if it could be an editor, it could be a cast, it could be a star. Anybody involved in these productions this is something that really, really stays with me. Something that they said about making a picture in the 70s or 80s or whenever, that you think that's quite. I'm sure there's.
Let's see. I recently had the great pleasure of speaking with Brian Usna, the producer and director, who's probably best known for working with his partner Stuart Gordon on the Reanimator films.
Right.
And he told a really interesting story about directing his first film, Society, which was a satire.
Wow, that's quite
of the 1%.
I'm sure everybody has a story about in the theaters at midnight, because we're that generation. People in their 40s and 50s and 60s would have seen Society at a midnight screening in New York or at
right.
That was quite.
Yeah, that was something. But he told a story about how they achieved the climactic special effect, which was essentially a giant puppet with 3 or 4 puppeteers underneath it and a whole lot of lubricant. And just hearing those stories like that about the nuts and bolts of making the film, for critics and academics, you really most of what we see is the finished product, often years after it's been released, and so we're analyzing it as a finished product and looking at it in terms of its audience reception. And so to get a chance to hear these stories of production and all of the accidents that occur to make what happens on the screen actually happen is very illuminating. So that was a good one. Let's see, a second one that was really enjoyable. Recently talked to the director Worth Keeter, who got his start in North Carolina, actually, where we are, working on some regional pictures, and then went out to Hollywood to try to make his fortune. And he told a story about how he was crossing the street one day and a fella yelled his name out, and it was a producer that he had, become friendly with. And out of that kind of chance encounter, he ended up getting a gig directing most of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers of the 90s. Just kind of the most random happenstance. And I had no idea.
Just back again to the 90s. It makes me think about figures. Well, it makes me think about figures like Julie Strain and heaven knows who knows who else. Shannon Tweed. I don't know. That's its own universe of Fred Olen Ray and Shepard, Jewel Shepard. It's funny.
It's funny you mentioned Fred Olen Ray. He's going to come up in our discussion a little bit later about how I got involved in this project.
Great. Well, I have a first edition of If I'm So Famous, How Come No One's Ever Heard of Me, which is Jewel Shepard's memoir. I think it's Jewel Shepard. It's either the other Shepard, one of the two Shepards, Delilah Shepard. You might know which one, but
I don't know that one.
It's sort of a B movie.
Oh.
B movie, Queen, anyhow, there's a lot of stuff about that world of that kind of exploitation filmmaking from the 80s and 90s in that book. I only mention that because it's it's sort of adjacent to some of the things you're talking about. Certainly. But for audiences that may not know, I think it's important that we maybe get into a little bit Woody Strode, right? Who was Strode? What was contribution to Hollywood and other things? And if you had
when I had the opportunity to pitch an essay for this book, I'm gonna tell the Fred Olen Ray connection by way of getting to
Okay.
Woody Strode. When I had that, and I have to give all credit in the world to Gloria Monti, who's a wonderful, wonderful editor and was so patient with me. The first idea I had was to talk about Carol Borland, the starlet of Mark of the Vampire, who kind of became the godmother of goth fashion. And Olen Ray cast her in her later years in 2 of his 80s films, Biohazard and Scalps.
That's right.
And so my first idea was, I'll write about Carol Borland, and maybe I'll also talk about Rory Calhoun, who had been in Angel and Hell Comes to Frogtown in his later years. And then I'll also add in Woody Strode, who was in a 1984 horror movie called Scream, not the Wes Craven Scream, different Scream, 1981 actually, which had been directed by a stuntman, former stuntman turned director that Woody Strode had known. Well, Gloria wisely said that is what
director who's not Hal Needham,
right?
Hal Needham, yeah.
Well, Gloria very wisely said, Will, that is way too much to put into a single essay. And I realized immediately that she was right. And as I thought about it, I narrowed it down to Woody Strode because he had such a unique career. To use a cliche, he was a trailblazer, but it's truly applicable in his case. And so I decided to write about his later kind of cameo appearances in Francis Ford Coppola's 1984 film, The Cotton Club, Mario Van Peebles' revisionist Western from 1993, Posse, and Woody Strode's final appearance, Sam Raimi's The Quick and the Dead in 1995. And the more I researched about Strode's life, the more fascinating it got. I had no idea some of the. I knew him primarily from Spartacus and from John Ford movies, like Sergeant Rutledge, mostly The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. But I didn't know about his career prior to becoming an actor. He had. He's half. Half and half is hard to say. He's partly African American, partly indigenous. Claims membership to a couple of tribes on his mother's side of the family, and was born in Louisiana in 1914. And he and his family migrated to California to escape the Jim Crow South. Mm-hmm. And he ended up becoming a notable athlete. And he, along with several other figures, including Kenny Washington and Jackie Robinson, integrated the UCLA football team. And from there, Strode and Washington and Robinson integrated professional football, baseball. Strode went on to be one of the figures who integrated professional wrestling. And he was actually seen by a producer on a broadcast of a wrestling match and brought out to Hollywood to be a background actor, small roles because of his kind of ambiguous ethnicity. And this is the way it was back then. Right. If you even had a tan, you were cast as pretty much any kind of ethnicity. And so Strode played, Asian, African, Native American parts. Got his first break in the Ten Commandments, where he was playing a slave character. Yeah. And Cecil B. DeMille liked the look of him and brought him in to read for a small role as the king of, was it Ethiopia or Egypt? Egypt, must be Egypt. Yeah. And Strode agreed to it if he could keep his background role as a slave character, because that guaranteed pay for 5 weeks, and the king of Egypt only paid for 2. So he made sure he got to be in both roles. And then from there, he broke out with a really meaty role in Pork Chop Hill, Louis Milestone's film. Wow. With Gregory Peck. And that led to Spartacus, which led to the John Ford films.
Amazing.
And then from there, like many other actors, went to Italy. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that period, he was in some of the best films in cinema history, and some of the best directors. I mean, Kubrick and John Ford. That's just sit on that for a little bit. That's Liberty Valance. Don't shoot the legend, shoot the
Right.
shoot the legend, not. And then you said Italy just now, and you kind of
went to Italy. Has the kind of legendary sequence in Once Upon a Time in the West, the Sergio Leone film, and just shot a ton of Italian westerns. He was in Boot Hill, Unholy Four, The Gatling Gun, The Revengers, all these kinds of films. In fact, an interesting film he did, one that Strode later said this was the best role he ever had, and I think he was right. In 1968, he was in a film called Seduto alla sua destra, which means roughly by the hand of God.
Yeah.
And this was directed by Valerio Zerlini, the Italian art house director.
Mm-hmm.
And he played Patrice Lumumba, right?
Yeah.
And films of thinly veiled depiction of Lumumba and his revolutionary life and eventual assassination.
Yeah.
When it was released in the United States, it was given a funk soundtrack and called Black Jesus, which just goes to show kind of the way, you're unable to escape that racial connotation in Hollywood.
I happened to see that version. That's the
you
version.
Saw the Black Jesus? Yeah,
I did. Yeah.
And it's a great film, and it's another one that really is in need of restoration and re-release.
Yeah, there's so many. So Strode has a long career in a way.
Yeah.
He has many careers. He has more than one career, sports and movies.
Yeah.
Kind of yeah.
Yeah, and in the kind of civil rights and post-civil rights era, he kind of got left behind a little bit because of a number of factors. He was kind of painted as as someone with a conservative viewpoint. He never wanted. He never kind of came out as a activist or a leftist. He always just kind of said. One of his famous quotes is, I don't care what kind of role it is, black, white, Asian. If the money's right, I'll play Mickey Mouse. He was kind of this generation that didn't want to engage with the radical language of the civil rights movement, and instead wanted to just. I don't want to put words in his mouth or pretend that as a white man that I can understand the experience that he was going through, but based on interviews that he gave, he and I have some quotes about it in the essay, but he always downplayed discussion of race in his own life. He always recognized it, right? That he was fighting an uphill battle against racial prejudice and racism. And another one of his most famous quotes in interviews is that thank God we thought we were equal, right? Meaning that he never recognized the language of oppression or inequality, that he just went out and did what he did. Now, in fact, of course, Woody Strode was more aware than anyone else about the circumstances that he faced in the Jim Crow South and in the pre-civil rights era, segregation, and the post-civil rights backlash. But he chose not to for better or for worse. And I think there's legitimate criticism and there's also legitimate praise that can be given to him. He chose not to engage with that kind of rhetoric, and instead sort of integrated himself through sheer force of will.
Yeah. Well, would it be fair to say that puts him at odds? Is not the, maybe that's too strong a way of putting it, but it's different from a Jim Brown, right, or a Fred Williams,
right. Well, Fred Williamson was more radical, but Fred Williamson also would say things like, I don't want to talk about being a black actor. I just want to talk about being an actor. Right. Yeah. That being said, Fred Williamson, Jim Brown, Jim Kelly, Richard Roundtree, all those guys, right? Pam Grier, all of them were very clear-eyed about what they faced. And so it's interesting to me, looking back on this era and trying to understand the context in which we face the reckoning we face right now in 2026 with race and the sort of reactionary forces in our country and in others. To see history play out in the careers of all of these actors who, in Woody Strode's case, he came before. He was one of the first athletes to make the transition into Hollywood. And so you could suggest that Fred Williamson and Jim Kelly kind of follow in his footsteps all the way up to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson,
Yes.
But on the other hand, you could argue that Strode kind of stepped out of the struggle just when his voice might have been most impactful. And some of what I'm saying, of course, is speculation. And again, I want to emphasize that as a white guy, I'm not in any way trying to pretend like I can understand what it was like to go through what he went through. But just looking back at the record and the archives and his performances and his and in particular performances in films like Sergeant Rutledge, which is specifically about his character as a black man accused of doing the worst thing a black man can be accused of doing, which is raping and killing a white woman. Right? That's the story of Sergeant Rutledge. Yes. His performance there, his performance in a film like The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, in which you have that great scene of Jimmy Stewart teaching the schoolhouse and asking Woody Strode's character to read from was it the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence? I forget.
Probably.
Yeah. Where he talks about how he always forgets that part about all men being created equal. Very pointed bit of dialogue, right? It was the Declaration of Independence. Whatever someone thinks about Strode as a political actor, as a icon of Hollywood, he stands uniquely as an individual who not only broke barriers but opened doors for others and created an iconic presence for himself. And it's true. One of the reasons that I really wanted to settle on him as a subject, and Gloria Monti agreed, is we don't know Woody Strode as well as we should today, and he's not as well regarded as a cinematic icon as I think he should be. I'm a big fan. So.
Right. Well, he's in some great movies, and I said he had more than one career. Again, it's not so typical to have somebody excel in sports and excel in acting as he did in movies. I want to ask kind of maybe it's a dumb question, naive question, but eras seems to play a role. So when hearing you talk about Woody Strode, I don't know why I thought of Paul Robeson, but I guess there's a sense in which, as of course someone, Paul Robeson, I guess is an avowed Marxist-Leninist, indeed a communist. That's pretty far left as an African American singer performer. and then you have people like Sammy Davis Jr. voting for Nixon. So there is a diversity. There's always, I take it, there's always been a diversity of viewpoints and opinions in every group, right? And so you get all kinds of but I guess the era that the only reason I mention era is that it feels different to me. The 40s, the 30s, 40s, 50s. 40s and 50s are the Liberty Valance and the Sergeant Rutledge.
Mm-hmm.
We feel
Rutledge was 1960. Yeah,
1960. Well, even but in 1960, you're still. It's not 1969, right? That's a big difference. 71. Right. So that's what I mean. So there's a change between the Fred Woods and Jim Brown. I guess why I call my question on is what role do you think it's probably to do eras or the mood or sensibility of an era play in terms of parts people do and in terms of expectations of actors, and what do you think about that? Because that's got to be a great part of it.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, if you look at his earliest roles where he's playing, he plays the bad guy in a Tarzan movie, right? He plays slave characters and as I mentioned, the Ten Commandments. But then when you get to Pork Chop Hill, set during the Korean War, he plays a black soldier who's considering going AWOL because, as he explicitly says in the dialogue, why should I die for a country that hates me? So,
it's great.
Once he started getting these larger roles, he was, by virtue of the productions themselves, being positioned in these challenging racial reckonings, right? Pork Chop Hill and Sergeant Rutledge being the most obvious of them, but even looking at Spartacus.
Spartacus.
Right, as a black gladiator who's fighting for his life, going all the way up to, I think, the first film where his name was top-lined with his co-stars was The Professionals in 1966.
Yes.
With Burt Lancaster, Robert Ryan, Lee Marvin.
Wow.
He's always kind of fighting for that status, the recognition. And I pulled up a quote. Frank Manchel wrote that Strode had tremendous pride in his ethnic heritage and his personal achievements, but had a lot of difficulty reconciling his deeply held assimilationist views with those of black activism in the 60s. So I guess, I'm not saying I'm comparing him to like Booker T. Washington or something like that, but he definitely had that kind of, I'm going to be so much better than everybody around me. I'm going to do my job to the T, and I'm going to win acceptance through virtue of that, as opposed to direct political action. I think that was really the perspective he had that led to him being seen as kind of reactionary and conservative, as opposed to the younger generation.
Right. Well, there's of course the other thing and then I hope this isn't too far off topic, but I'm thinking got me thinking about the 50s for some reason. Now the 50s has a reputation, undeserved reputation, as sort of a conservative era, but as you know, there were many radical movies made in the 50s by Sam Fuller, bigger than life. Nicholas Ray is a radical vision of the suburban family and drug addiction, and so I think there's a dimension to the 50s that's a lot more takes more chances than we would think.
Oh, sure, yeah. The directorial career of Ida Lupino, right? All the stuff she was doing.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't something that just starts in the 60s or just and it's and I think Woody Strode was part of that.
He was really, if you want to compare it to, say, a wave in which the crest was the Civil Rights Act and Martin Luther King Jr., Woody Strode could kind of be seen as the gathering of that wave, the upward trajectory, which is why I was really interested in looking at his later career in the um, 80s and 90s. In particular, the Cotton Club, which we have the unique opportunity because Francis Ford Coppola is now in his later years going back and re-editing a lot of his older films. Cotton Club came out in 1984 and was kind of famously messed with by the producers who felt like there was too much attention played on the black characters. This is a movie specifically set in a black club, you know, and
about black music.
Right, exactly. It's like, well, not enough Richard Gere. We got to get more Richard Gere. So in 2019, Coppola released a revised version of the Cotton Club, and Woody Strode in that character plays a doorman at the club, and so he has a couple of scenes. One at the very beginning where he's denying entrance to a woman of color, right, who's with a white man. He says he can't let her in. He has several scenes with Gregory Hines, in which they kind of, they're going back and forth about working in the club and dealing with the white man. He has a couple of scenes where he goes back and forth with Richard Gere. And in the recut version, Strode's role is significantly larger, still a cameo, but he's clearly positioned as this character who is opening doors, literally, for performers to pass through, but is being left outside himself, and there's so much resonance to his own career as the guy who kind of came first before so many great artists that we now know much better. So that was an interesting film to analyze in that sense. Something similar happens in Mario Van Peebles' The Story, Posse.
Posse, yeah.
In which he plays the storyteller who bookends the film. And what Posse does, much like Sidney Poitier's 1971 film Buck and the Preacher, what Posse does is recognize that, if you look at Westerns, you wouldn't, as a genre, historically, you wouldn't be able to tell that a full quarter of all American cowboys were black. But in fact, about a quarter of all cowboys historically were black. After the Civil War, many people quite reasonably moved west. And when you think about Woody Strode's career, he's primarily known for Westerns, right? As being often the one black character in Western. And so to have him as the storyteller character recounting the narrative events of Posse carries that resonance as well, which is really fascinating to think about.
You're bringing back all these memories. I have confessed I have not watched the Cotton Club since I was 17, I think, and in the theaters when it came out. I guess so. I should probably go back. It's going to be re-released now, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah,
to see the version of it and revisit it. And
Coppola is the one director who I always enjoy his revisits. When we have something like 5 cuts of Apocalypse Now. We've got a new cut of One from the Heart. We've got a new cut of The Outsider.
When is One from the Heart coming out?
It's out. It just came out this 2025, I think. Okay. And I, unlike, say, George Lucas, whose re-edits of Star Wars are famously despised by the fans, I think what Coppola has been doing by revisiting his films has been really interesting. A lot of times, in the case of the Cotton Club, you're getting to see something closer to what Coppola had intended in the first place, and so I really value the availability of this new cut.
You would say that that's a case where it's a cliched case of producers interfering with the picture, the vision of the picture, and very irresponsible in that sense, and not.
It was very, very, very simply, the producers thought that white audiences wouldn't go see a film where black characters were the main focus. They wanted the whole story to be more tuned to Richard Gere, and that still happens today. There was such trepidation. It seems kind of odd now, but what, 6 or 7 years ago, when the MCU, the Marvel Universe, released Black Panther, and there was all this trepidation in the studios. Will people go out to see a movie about a black superhero? Well, of course they will. Yeah. And it became a $1 billion franchise and led to Ryan Coogler getting carte blanche for Sinners, which set the record for Oscar nominations of a single film. It's all part of this continuum, I guess.
It's fascinating. I mean, there's so much. I have to get that one from the high because it happens to be a movie I actually like a lot. And it's a movie about which there's more stories and legends sometimes than viewings, right? It's one of the like Heaven's Gate. It has accumulated a lot of reputation, a lot of, and then some people feel it's Coppola's one of his better films, a lot of different opinions on that picture. I didn't want to, I wanted to talk about a couple actresses. I don't know who exactly, but we can't do an episode on comebacks without, talking about some of the actresses who actually make a comeback and when, and what the stories around that, and what who comes to your consciousness or mind when I ask about that.
Yeah, as I said at the outset, right, this book collection and Gloria's genesis for the project starts with Gloria Swanson as Norman Desmond in Sunset Boulevard, right? Okay. Which is such a layered example of a comeback, right? It's a film about an aging starlet trying to make a comeback, starring an aging starlet. And I had the great pleasure, I guess it was about a year ago, they re-released Sunset Boulevard in theaters in advance of a 4K physical disc restoration. And I went to see it in a theater, and it was just me and another fellow who's a bit older than I was. And we were in the theater.
Amazing.
In the dark, watching this film, and at the end, we both stood up and looked at each other in silent awe. And all I could think to say was, "Boy, they don't make them like that anymore, do they?" And he said, "No, sir." And that was it. That was our conversation. But so much more was communicated than those brief words. It was such a pleasure to see. And that film, in which Swanson plays this former film star who has been completely left behind by the system, who finds herself attracted to and sort of both seducing and purchasing the I guess, for want of a better word, the attention of a younger man, played by the young William Holden, is really of a piece with the way. I mean, it really is the ultimate example of the way in which Hollywood discards or if not discards, pushes to the margin women as they age. With the possible exception of Meryl Streep, I've not too many women manage to escape the economic and cultural sexism of Hollywood. And so this book does, I think, a really amazing job. It brings in so many great writers. I'm honestly a minor part of it, I say in all humility. There are some great essays about Joan Crawford and Betty Davis, and so many others who returned to the screen in their later years in films that kind of comment upon their earlier stardom. Another example would be Judy Garland, who, after having a decade absence from the screen, comes back with A Star Is Born.
Yeah.
In 1954. That film was not financially successful, so she didn't get another starring role for another 10 years after that. But now we look back at A Star Is Born as being very much a comment upon her rise and fall. And I think it's a wonderful coincidence that George Cukor, who was the original director of The Wizard of Oz, then finally gets to direct her in A Star Is Born.
Absolutely.
Which has, as I mentioned, so many camp resonances as well.
That's true.
So those are some examples. And of course, you mentioned Jackie Brown. We'd be remiss not to mention Pam Grier, right? Who
behind me, you can see there, Foxy.
There she is. Yeah. Who had a wonderful career resurgence as a result of that. I think the best thing Quentin Tarantino has ever done in his life is casting Pam Grier and Jackie Brown.
I mean, it's some people say it's his best film. I don't know. I mean, it's up there. It's a good film.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is have you seen Sleepy Time Gal, Christopher Munch's picture?
No, I haven't. That's one that's escaped me.
It's Jacqueline Bisset from 2001. Yeah. Just thought I'd mention it. It's kind of, again, these lost movies that kind of
putting that down.
Slip through the cracks. That's so you went all the way back to Gloria Swanson. So you got to go, just like you have to go back to the earlier years of cinema history to get a real sense of it. We're going to talk about we don't want to just talk about something that happened in the 60s or 70s or 80s. I think, don't you think the made-for-TV movie has played a role? Well, certainly it's played a role, or television in general in casting older, or did, or it does, and probably.
Oh, for sure. I mentioned Toby Hooper in the beginning because I had written that book. Yeah. And so another comeback film that occurs to me is Salem's Lot, the made-for-TV miniseries that Hooper did, which had Marie Windsor and Elisha Cook Jr., who had so famously been in Stanley Kubrick's The Killing.
That's right.
Back in the 50s, and their presence in Salem's Lot never fails to bring a smile to my face every time I watch it. So that's a great example. Another made-for-TV film, and this is another one that Woody Strode is in, that in an early version of my essay I included, but we ended up cutting it for space. But Volker Schlondorf made a TV film in 1987 called A Gathering of Old Men. It was an adaptation of a novel.
Okay.
And Louis Gossett Jr. stars in it. A young Holly Hunter. Gossett Jr. got nominated for an Emmy. And this is the story of this film is this racist white farmer in Louisiana is shot by a black man in self-defense. So, of course, this means that a lynching is on the horizon. And a sheriff played by Richard Widmark, also in his later years, has to kind of stand between this group of old black men who have a Spartacus moment. All of the elderly black men claim that they're the ones who did it, right? In order to protect the young fella who did it. And the group includes Papa John Creech, Julius Harris, Woody Strode,
Great.
Howard Sandman Sims, just some Flash Riley, like all of these older black entertainers, right? Yeah, it is. It's a who's who, and it's a really interesting film, and one that again illustrates in very stark ways the history of race in America. And yeah, as a TV film, it's this really great. Coincidentally, it was shot in Thibodaux, Louisiana, which is the same place that the Gator Bait movies were shot. So we have all kinds of coincidences swirling together. But yeah, that's another example of a TV film that really provided a space.
Another question that comes to my mind, and maybe it's a naive question, I don't know, is that there's a difference, of course, between an actual comeback, right, and sort of what we might call a guest star or a cameo, I think. So there's, right?
Yeah.
What would an example of I don't know why I'm thinking of this, Cassavetes' Sons picture,
Oh, sure.
A Notebook with James Garner and Jenna Rollins together, right? Those are stars, right? That's or who I've had on the show, Mel Mayron Snapshots, which is really a must see because it has Brooke Adams, and Piper Laurie in the same, as it's kind of, so sometimes, sometimes it takes an actor director, a director that knows all the actors or has to get the roles or make the thing,
I think that's a really good question too. The original title for the book included cameos as well as comebacks. And I think in my case, in the case of this Woody Strode study, there are really more cameos, right, being cast based on his history, whereas a comeback is something that is either designed to bring an actor or actress back,
restart,
or by virtue of their casting brings them back, and that's all addressed in the various essays of this book. I'll hold it up to the camera in case anyone watches on YouTube.
I love that cover. That's another reason why I wanted to do
great. That's for those who are listening only. The cover is a still from Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Aldrich. Bob Aldrich.
Yeah. Oh, I love Robert Aldrich.
Bob Aldrich, and that's why I mentioned that retrospective we had. We showed every one of his movies, everything from the, Twilight's Last Gleaming with Burt Lancaster to. Well, I love that wrestling. Do you ever see his ladies wrestling picture? All the marbles.
The marbles. Yeah, that's another one that languishes on DVD.
This is another. I love that picture, and it's kind of that era. All the marbles is the same era as, say, Cutter's Way.
Yeah,
I classify that as movies that are really 70s. They're sort of 70s movies stuck in the early 80s, or they're movies that are kind of on the edge there. They're sort of 80s, but not really.
That's a good way of putting it. Well, Cutter's Way recently got a nice 4K restoration, so maybe all the marbles will come.
I don't know. They're very, very different films, probably very different audiences.
But hopefully someone in the archives is looking through films of that era.
So you're kind of in good company. I think it's you, Daniel Kramer, right? Amanda Reyes, that you folks are the ones. I mean, doing a lot of commentaries is what I'm saying. Doing a lot.
Well, I appreciate you putting me in that group. I'm nowhere near at the level of Amanda Reyes or Daniel Kramer. I've gotten to work tangentially on a project with Amanda. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Daniel yet, but yeah, they're both to me role models of the form, along with people like Sam Deegan and Erica Schultz and Howard Berger, people like that.
Howard Berger's maybe the most prolific. I mean, there was a period of time when he was.
Yeah, he's on it. He's his own brand, But yeah,
I wondered if you've heard this. I'd only ask because you may have heard it. There's a new release of Going South, Jack Nicholson and Mary Steenburgen.
Yeah.
Have you heard the commentary? It's really interesting.
I haven't
They got
listened
a
to
scholar. It's really good because he quotes this book about Jack Nicholson's acting, just a book just on him as an actor, not as a star. There's always little details about the set of Going South and Drive, he said, and I listen. Wow, that's
So that film. Speaking of Daniel Kremer, right? Daniel Kremer does a piece. It's by the Vinegar Syndrome imprint, Cinematograph. They put it. So I've gotten it and I've watched the film, which was a rediscovery for me. I'd only ever seen it on VHS, and it looks much better. Now that you can see the whole picture.
I guess. Well, you wouldn't be surprised to hear I saw it in theaters in the 70s as a
wow
10-year-old. As I saw everything then, as you know, the theaters. But I remember liking the movie. But I remember coming home, and I think my dad said everybody hated this movie. That was the kind of the mood at the time. I thought it was a case of somebody not, a lot of perception is just basically context. If people had just seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or something, I guess they're going to be disappointed, maybe, or something in seeing Going South. I'm not saying that's a legitimate reason, but it's just kind of people expect certain things based on what an actor has just done. There's that too.
I think comedy in particular, it's harder for audiences to accept a character with human contradictions. That kind of the kind of nuance. I think had Going South been a drama, it might have been better considered. But I found it to be really funny. Of course, I'm watching it with the benefit of
hindsight,
35 years or so.
You know that if it were a drama, it would be a bad movie.
Yeah, I don't think it would. Yeah, it might get better reviews, but it wouldn't be.
It's a good picture in part because of its comedy.
I think it's hilarious.
It is hilarious. There's things that are unacceptable now, like John Belushi playing a Mexican,
right.
I think, and that's going back to a thing we mentioned earlier about Woody Strode being cast.
Yeah.
Just any random non-white or non-white characters. It's that's just the history of cinema and television, right? Just kind of these problems.
It is, yeah, and we still see it happening today, certainly. I think in the case of Strode, just to go back to him for a minute, the fact of his indigenous ancestry, I think, is at time understandably in some ways, given the short shrift in terms of his historical significance, because in the United States, if you have one drop of African blood, you're considered African American. In his case, he's indigenous and African American, and he's often just considered a black actor as a result. But he was very proud. He had a great deal of pride in his indigenous roots. Married a Hawaiian princess, and which is really cool. How many people can say they did that? And really saw himself and his family as being as much indigenous as anything else.
Yeah.
That's
it's interesting, isn't it, to think about cinema history as a short history relative to the novel, right? Because it's not like 300 years, and yet it's so vast. It's almost there's so many movies and there's so much to it. It's
it really democratized storytelling in many ways. Even though filmmaking, at least up until now, was so expensive, which created its own barriers. It's still enabled, just by virtue of such wider audiences, more opportunities to tell stories. So it does seem like things have gone both faster and slower than the novel in a way, in terms of the proliferation of cinema as the dominant narrative form, and its relative youth as an art form. It's still only 130 years old. That's nothing.
Yeah, I guess that's why I called it short. I mean, of course, it's all real. I mean, it's not short at all from the point of view of a single lifetime, because people don't live,
right.
Single lifespans.
Well, as we said at the beginning, they're working on it.
Oh yeah, they are. Yeah, to get us up there to it's. Have you ever noticed it's always the people we don't want around that are kind of. It's always the last people you want to live that go for the 100 years. It's got to be them that stick around.
Yeah. No.
It's like only the good die young. Billy Joel Billy Joel went out of the park with that. No, I don't know. I don't really know. I mean, it's fascinating to thinking about movies. So, of course, now so much of our movie experience is at home. Of course, since the pandemic, streaming, and as you know, I've said before that some of the best things made are not made in theater release, but made some great things have been made for Netflix and HBO. Not all of it, but some of it's quite good, even excellent. And so that's a new dimension and format. But I wanted to.
It is.
But I did want to bring up that there is nothing. I don't think that can duplicate what Pauline Kael talked about when the lights go down. Collective emotional responses, especially the kind of movies when we're talking about exploitation films and B movies. Those are, wouldn't you say those are in a sense engineered for a collective strangers in the dark type of response because of the content, because of the the nature of the material.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Because exploitation traffics in content that is very visceral. Yeah. That hits us in a part of our consciousness that AI will never be able to replicate. The attraction we have to violence and to sex and to death, right? These bodily experiences that are exciting and frightening and
I mean, I've gone to so many. I mean, a lot of my memories are of seeing theatrical movie experiences. So the opening weekend of Full Metal Jacket, or seeing I Spit on Your Grave in theaters.
Wow.
Seeing The Hills Have Eyes, as I said, in theaters. There's just I saw a movie called A Riot because people hated the movie so much. The movie Tidal Wave with Lauren Green, which is sort of a weird. Roger Corman spliced together some old Japanese monster pictures with trying to make a new movie and cast Lauren Green as the president. And it's just all editing. Really terrible movie because there's not many disaster sequences, and the entire audience, erupted with wanted their money back. They're like, we want, they almost stampeded the ticket cap, the money to get their $1.50 back for this film. But it's just when you see films like that in theaters, it's just those are experiences. Those are public art experiences. Those are
absolutely.
They are. I don't know. It's only with time can you really tell how. Well, of course, you do some teaching, so I think you're familiar with younger people or how younger people respond to some of these more, shall we say, emotionally intense B-type pictures, and what the response is. Yeah,
I'm always fascinated. Yeah, and I teach courses. I'm teaching a course right now called The American West in Film and Television. So we're looking at Westerns. I teach courses in horror. I teach courses in cult cinema, and I'm always fascinated to see young people's reactions to these films, especially because I realize that the passage of time and the changes in distribution mean that it's unlikely they've ever seen them. And so I showed Sergeant Rutledge this semester, and people were blown away by the politics of it. They couldn't believe that a movie in 1960 could talk about racial politics in that way. Similarly, when I showed, I mentioned Brian Usna earlier, I showed his film Return of the Living Dead 3, right? A direct-to-video film from 1993.
One I have not seen.
I recommend it. It's very melancholy. One of my students said it was the saddest zombie movie he'd ever seen because it focuses on a single woman who's bitten by a zombie and slowly changes, it becomes a metaphor for eating disorders and self-harm and the sort of feminine body dysmorphia that so many young and older women go through, and it's surprisingly heavy for a direct-to-video second sequel of a of a zombie film. So things like that are always really fascinating, and I'm very lucky as a teacher to be able to kind of mix together canonical and underground film and to get a chance to focus on underseen films and underrepresented filmmakers.
Sure.
A film I really love showing students is Losing Ground from 1982, the film by Kathleen Collins.
Amazing film. Amazing.
And students are always blown away by it. I think
they haven't seen anything like that, have they?
Yeah.
They haven't seen professors talking about Jean-Paul Sartre even,
right?
in film, or those dance sequences at the end. Those kind of non-people.
Unbelievable.
That's a really great film.
And it's such a radical thing for a film from 1982 to depict a middle-class Black intellectual couple. And it's a shame that that's such a radical thing.
It would make a great double bill with My Brother's Wedding.
Yeah.
That film about the dry cleaning family and all the.
Yeah.
Because I think it's the same year,
right?
Isn't
beautiful films. Yeah, 82. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah. So I love getting the chance to show films like that and give students a chance. Kids who are 19, 20 now, a chance to react and look at this history and contextualize it within their own ideas and politics and everything.
I know that there are filmmakers or screenwriters who have done work in archiving and right. I don't know I don't know what names come to mind. Well, doesn't Joe Dante have a lot to do with Isn't Joe Dante involved in renovating pictures and
sure, yeah. I know that he has been a major figure with projects like Trailers from Hell in keeping films in the public eye, and I know he's worked with several of the boutique Blu-ray labels to find and restore films, especially from the 60s and 70s.
Well, on that topic, the really incendiary Frank Perry film Last Summer's coming, I think, is being released, right? That's the news. I saw that they're doing a new screen of Last Summer, late summer.
Really?
Talking about from Frank Perry. That's a Barbara Hershey and maybe it was unfair to call it incendiary, but it is not it's quite a film. Yeah.
I can't remember who has the rights to that, but I know it's just been restored, and so it's going to be coming out soon. And a number of, this is going in a different direction, but a number of films that have previously been thought lost or unrecoverable, like The Spook Who Sat by the Door, that's coming soon. I'm so excited about that.
Yeah. I got to see Herbie Hancock introduce that.
Oh wow!
Yeah. And talk about recording that score, which of course that score became a lot of the tunes he would do, and just to do them. separate from the
Yeah.
score. But yeah.
Oh man, that must have been for you in particular. Given
Oh yeah,
your,
it was something. I mean, but we also saw it on an original print, and as you know, some of those old prints, like from 1972,
yeah,
were kind of. I remember Robert Altman talk about movies turning pink. I'm trying to remember the turn pink. I guess that's the color thing that happens with age, you know.
Yeah, I know, and sometimes that creates. I know. I can't remember the filmmaker, but there was a filmmaker recently who was having one of his films shown at the New Beverly, which has a policy of always on film.
That's right.
But the print they had was all battered and looked terrible, and he had a newly restored digital version, but they couldn't accommodate it, and so he had to sit and watch the crappy looking version of the film. So sometimes,
well, as you know, even filmmakers don't agree. You remember, of course, you remember the feud over French Connection between Freak and was it not Bill Butler? Was it Michael Chapman? One of those. I forget who was the DP on Roisman. That's right, Roisman. It was Roisman and of course they disagreed because Freak says, "I love my cleaned up. The original is terrible. Yeah. I don't ever want to see my French Connection, the 72 version. I like my new digital." And Roisman wrote a so it's kind of this public fight between Roisman, and William Friedkin over the French Connection. That's
by coincidence, and I'm sad. By coincidence, and I'm sad about this because Friedkin has now passed away. A lot of the films that were being held up by his exacting demands of presentation are finally beginning to come out. And I recently had the great honor of contributing a commentary to Jade with my friend Nina K. Martin.
I'm going to get that just for that. Just for your commentary. When is that?
There are two. It's out now. There are two versions. One was released by Vinegar Syndrome, and one was released by Imprint Films. I'm on the Imprint Films edition. They're both 4K restorations and look incredible. But
that's a weird movie. I mean, I agree. That's a really
getting to see it, and there's a director's cut as well that's significantly different that I had never seen before. So I highly recommend revisiting Jade. It will not be top tier Friedkin, but it is really interesting to look at in its restored version. So I'll throw that out to the audience to check out.
Do you mind discussing some of the changes in the film from directors versus the ones released? Is there something?
Oh, sure. Well, without spoiling it, there is a lot more to the ending. Some character development. I don't want to say too much. There's some character, but there's more character development with Linda Fiorentino's character that gives you. I think in the theatrical version, and I say this in my commentary, she is ultimately robbed of her agency as a character, and in the director's cut, there's a little more room for her and interpretations of where she's going. So worth it just for that. A little more.
On similar topic, I just purchased We Kill for Love, which we discussed in our first.
Oh yeah.
That I think it's newer, and then there's. Would you say Jade is in the universe of those pictures? You would. Right?
Sure, and as I said, I did this commentary with Nina K. Martin, who's one of the interview subjects in We Kill for Love, and she wrote this book called Sexy Thrills, which is about erotic thrillers.
Right.
And one of the things we talk about in our commentary is, what's the difference between erotic thriller and neo-noir? And the answer, I kind of facetiously said this, but only half facetiously. The answer really is just cachet, the budget maybe. Which actors, how well known the actors are. Do you have Linda Fiorentino or do you have Shannon Tweed? That's the difference between an erotic thriller and a neo-noir. and
or Julie Strain, right?
Right, or Julie Strain, rest in peace. Yeah, she was the best. Yeah, so it was a really fun conversation.
It's amazing to think about women screen presences like Julie Strain, as if there is anybody like Julie Strain.
Yeah,
but there is a kind of actress. Do you think that that's disappeared from commercial filmmaking, or is it not something that could that just be change in taste or change in styles, or could it be that maybe people want things to be only naturalistic? They don't want any kind of stylization, maybe. I don't know. I'm not far from knowledgeable about audience taste. And
sometimes I feel the same way. Do you mean in terms of
there's a paradox, because movies today could be extremely artificial. If you think about the substance, that's extremely stylized, right?
Sure, yeah.
You can't get more stylized than the substance, I suppose. But there is a naturalistic element, I guess, in terms of what people want to see, I guess, in acting or in screen presence. And maybe some of those B actors, were very unabashedly stylized, unabashedly,
right, like, and can't be, right? Like,
sometimes there can't be.
Yeah, the artifice. I think especially in the sort of low budget B movie, even though we don't really have A and B movies anymore, B movie has its own aesthetic. I think in that realm there are still a lot of quote unquote scream queens and kings, who have that status as always kind of winking a little bit at the audience. And then there are people who kind of can go back and forth, like a Bruce Campbell, who, can have those winking over the top performances, but then can also be a character actor in a straighter film. I think of people, you think of you mentioned Julie Strain. I think of people like Tiffany Shepis, right, who got her start. I had the pleasure of working with her on a project last year connected to The Toxic Avenger, and she's such a pro, and she kind of will toggle back and forth between the sort of winking at you and doing the kind of over the top trauma style, and also just being a character actress, in however many dozens of movies she's making in a single year, so I think of somebody like that as a good example of, I mentioned I had the Joel Shepherd, Joel Shepherd memoir, similar era, similar. Jim Wynorski and those kind of Jim
people.
Wynorski, my favorite.
Yeah. Is he your favorite?
I've always been a fan of the how fun his movies are. That era has its problems in terms of the sexism and exploitation of women's bodies and all of that, but when you look at especially his films in the 80s and 90s, they're just so fun.
They are,
and seem to be laughing about the fact that they're getting made in the first place. That I've always had a soft spot for films like Deathstalker 2 and Chopping Mall.
Chopping Mall is one of the great slasher pictures. Right?
All of that.
Pretty much agreed upon.
Yeah. And you mentioned Joel Shepherd, films like she's in Scanner Cop or Scanner Cop 2.
Yeah.
She's in so many of those great exploitation films of the video store era.
Would it be out of place this episode to mention Chuck Vincent? Now, I don't know.
Sure.
Well, I don't know, because I only mentioned it. I think they're releasing his R-rated stuff now. Although that hadn't been, and that's the thing, because he made all these R-rated pictures.
Yeah, well, I mean, he did some pornographic stuff too, didn't he?
Well, that's what he's more known for.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He did all all these teen movies that
Yeah,
were
like summer camp, right? He did that, right?
summer camp, and which is he
That's
did. He did. It is a good one. It's or Preppies, or I think he did
Yeah. Hollywood Hot Tub, right, with Joel Schumer.
Hollywood, with Shepard. That's kind of I mean, he's a, of course, he's a little bit like Randall Kleiser, right? I mean, in the sense that if you look at him as part of queer cinema, because he's a gay filmmaker.
Yeah.
That's its own topic, right? Of gay filmmakers doing so-called straight cis type movies, heteronormative movies.
Right.
And how the movies differ. They are different, like how the movies come out different because of that.
Certainly. Yeah, he's a really interesting character in that sense. And there were several others.
There were many.
Generation, well, and Wes Craven himself, although not gay, moved from exploitation to pornography and then back into Hollywood as well.
Right. Well, he again, he's a one of a kind. He's this
certainly, yeah.
There's nothing. Nobody like Wes Craven. I sort of it's funny though because if you think about artists as having careers, it's fascinating to think about someone like a Chuck Vincent, or a Randall Kleiser, like the Blue Lagoon, Grease,
yeah,
Endless Love. I mean that's it's fascinating because they're it's fascinating I guess to think of them as having careers and what that career looks like, right? Maybe it's not too far apart from a Woody Strode in that there's a kind of diversity of output and passage of time, right? Because there's a passage of time, there's diversity of output. You can look at them and say, well, what is they have a unique point of view. Maybe they're liberal, maybe they're conservative. Maybe in the case of Randall Kleiser, they make a movie like It's My Party with Eric Roberts. It's openly about HIV, or at least, or Sergeant Rutledge. I see them as connected in a way. The connection, I guess, is the passage of time, right? Because we're talking about more than 1 or 2, 3 decades.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of putting it. Actually, and another coincidence, the title of my essay about Woody Strode is a quote from Posse, in which Woody Strode says, "One thing about time, is that that it always passes, always catches up."
Mm-hmm.
One thing about time, for sure. Yeah, I think that's a really great point that you make. You kind of brought everything together with that, which has been quite a far-ranging conversation.
Well, that always happens when I don't really set out to do that. It just comes with the.
That was great. It's great.
I hope you don't mind, but we do have to meet in person eventually, and we have to maybe go see a movie or something.
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed this part too. Maybe we'll have a part 3, hopefully.
Oh, why not? I was so happy I was so happy to be asked back and to talk with you again. So thanks.
Is there any before we go? Is there anything else you want to say about coming back as an actor, as a career, anything, or any comebacks that you feel should be mentioned before we go? That anything that pops into your head?
Oh wow. Well, as a film historian, I am ever hopeful that more and more people will get interested in physical media releases as a way of supporting the research and restoration for so many films that have yet to get their due, get their reassessment. And selfishly, because I spend a lot of time working on those releases myself. I have so many jumbled thoughts in response to that. Certainly reading through this book and that I'm so happy to be a part of, and reading the essays by the other contributors, I find myself thinking about so many actors and filmmakers who whose early work deserves revisiting, but who are also many of whom are still working and waiting for a chance to be rediscovered. That I hope that we continue to open up avenues for that. We started this with you mentioning Lisa Kudrow's show, The Comeback, which I think is a perfect example. Because what was it, like 10 years in between seasons for that show?
Season 2 was 10 years ago, I think, exactly.
Yeah.
Which I think they're conscious of in doing this season.
Right. And so to see her revisit that character with so much time passing, not only for the character, but for herself is so interesting. I tell you, this is a strange thing to come up, but when you asked that question, it gave me a memory of, I don't know why I saw this, but this is, and this is probably 10 or 15 years ago now, but you remember the American Pie sex comedy franchise of the 90s?
I think it's in the 2000s, wasn't it?
Is it the 2000s? Yeah. Gosh, 10 or 15 years ago, they did the 4th or 5th sequel.
Oh, yeah.
And it was called American Reunion. It was the cast of American Pie coming back to their 10-year high school reunion.
Okay.
And I'm not recommending the film. I
have to confess, I haven't seen any of the sequels.
I don't. Yeah, I'm not recommending any of them. But what I do think is interesting about them is that the sequels follow the characters in real time.
In real time.
And at the end of American Reunion, which again is a franchise that I don't necessarily care for, but at the end in the credits they show photographs of the actors as they were making American Pie, and then over the years up to American Reunion. So you see the passage of time for each of these actors. And I remember I was watching it in the theater and I started to cry. It was so affecting to see these young actors grow into these older adult actors, and to see their various careers go in different directions and everything. And again, that's part of the emotional effectiveness of film that AI generated content can't possibly replicate. The idea that a movie that I don't even care for on an aesthetic or an entertainment level can still hit me emotionally just by virtue of its humanity, so that was a fun memory to come up.
I can't think of a better conclusion to this episode, because it brings, that's what we've been talking about, the passage of time, and how every artist, every actor, everybody making things has a life. They're not just 10, 20 years. Right. And so we want to take into account the entirety of a life, and
sure. Yeah.
And all that mattering. So I want to thank you immensely for this episode. And
oh gosh, so happy to do it. What a fun conversation this has been. Thanks.
To be continued, Will.
Absolutely.